Warning. This podcast is about to open the sealed section of spirituality. Hey you, yeah you, we see you, you divine human being.
And we are calling you to come home.
We are ready to talk about the real shit. We're going to get real about life as a divine human being.
The good, the not so great, spirituality and taboo. Divinely Human is the podcast that's all about what it means to be human in a spiritual context.
We know it's not just about being spiritual, it's about being human too.
And that means changing poopy nappies and channeling angels.
Sometimes even at the same time. It's time for us to stop making other people's noise our own soundtrack of life.
Let's make some waves together so that we can all ride them together and create deep resonance, a sense of home in this crazy world.
Pour yourself a coffee
or a glass of wine if that's your potion,
and sit down with your new favorite spiritual sisters
as we go on a journey together into what it means to be
a divine human being
on this spiritual journey.
Hi, and welcome back to another week on the Divinely Human podcast. We are so happy to have you here. My name is Tanita, and I am your host.
And my name is Aleisha.
Co-host. We have a really interesting topic to talk to you about today. Honestly, this is kind of something that's swirling around in my overthinking, very dramatic Pisces brain right now. So I want to bring this conversation to the table because I'm kind of freaking out a little bit. And if you know me, I like change if I can control it. And this thing that I want to talk about today is something that I have literally zero control over. And so my insides are like freaking out a little bit.
I'm just like, my sister is a Pisces and she is so similar in the way of like knowing that there's a change taking place and not being like able to have any control over it. And I'm like, ooh, whereas I'm a little bit more, I guess, mutable, but at the same time, I'm still quite rigid. So I'm feeling you on this and what we're gonna be diving into today.
Crazy. And it's funny because just before we hit record, I was obviously catching Aleisha up and I was just saying, you know, this is something that I might want to talk about today. And she's like, of course you do, because I was just exploring this exact same thing last night. So feels divinely aligned. But the thing that I wanted to chat about, I was having a really in-depth conversation with one of my work colleagues on Monday, and he is a very intelligent person, reads a lot about a lot of different things. We were on the topic about artificial intelligence, and I'll be honest, I haven't read too much into my own about this. I've just picked up and heard other people's conversations and what my colleague was sharing with me. And he was explaining that artificial intelligence right now is at the same intelligence as human. And while I'm all for evolution and the expansion of humanity, something inside me is getting a little bit scared because I posted a story this morning. There's all of these AI face tune apps going around at the moment, right? And you put a selfie in and it makes you look like an AI and it's based on artificial intelligence. And my thought behind that is, well, what are they actually doing with these photos? Because I know that they're wanting to integrate AI into our society more and more. And if AI is ever going to meld in with humanity, it's got to be somewhat, you know, interwoven. So my thought is, and this might be a very unpopular opinion, but they are trying to integrate us into one another. They're trying to make us look more like them and them more like us. And I think they're stealing our fucking photos and they're going to use it for them coming into society. And it freaks me out. It freaks me out.
It is frightening. I agree. I am completely on board with how you feel about this. Do you know what's actually frightening? Like if you kind of strip it back, just the whole blending of artificial intelligence with the human experience in itself is a really frightening and risky place to explore. And it's something that feels like, it just doesn't feel right. Like human nature wise, it doesn't feel natural or right or intuitive. You probably could. That's probably the best way to, to feel into it. It's just not an intuitive place to want to explore into and to kind of sign up for in a way. And it kind of makes sense, right? Like, how are they going to, I know this sounds probably very conspiracy theorist, but if you think about how are they going to get enough data to create these AIs from nothing, right? They need like a blueprint, like a prototype to go off. So it does kind of make sense that they create these apps and they get people to sign up, and it becomes a trend because it is very much trending. And I've only realized this like the last 48 hours that there's this new trend going out. Yeah. Every single major influencer that I follow on my spiritual business's page has posted themselves in this Lensa app where they've turned themselves into an AI. Every single one of them. Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine, so many people, like I went and downloaded it as well and had a look what it was all about. And I went into it and they say you have to add 20 photographs of yourself from every angle. Whoa. Every angle, from close up, from far away, from the right side of your face, from the left side of your face. They say try get as many different angles of your face and your body as you can, and you upload them, and then they generate all of these AI pictures of you. And I'm like, that's 20 photographs of me that they want me to upload onto an app that I don't even know is secure.
Yeah, like what is their privacy?
Intuitively, immediately no. Yeah. Like where's the fine print? It just feels a little bit off, and it is that blending, the human experience with that technology. And I know we are progressing. We're going through this evolution, but there is such a thing as evolution going in the wrong direction, and that has led in the past to the demise of civilization before. If you think about the times back in when it was like just before like the Younger Dryas flood, where Atlantis and all of those places were thriving, and technology was up and coming, and we ended up screwing ourselves over, and there was a massive collapse of civilization back then. And it's like, are we heading there again? Are we going to come to our own demise? I don't know.
I don't know either. Truly, it's something that worries me because, one, yes, what are they doing with those photos? And two, I mean, if anything, this just shows us the power of influence, right? Because you get one person with all of these followers who are so just devoted to every moment of that person's experience. And one thing they do, they want to jump on. I worry that influence is going to shift from human-centered, conscious people to artificial intelligence, right?
And I mean,
we have no control over, and we don't know if they truly are aligned,
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking right now, if I was an influencer who is solely, I could never imagine myself doing this because at the end of the day, like, money is not the most important thing. But there are many people out there who are in a position of influence, who have their own social media accounts that bring in millions of dollars a year. If you had the choice to have an AI act as yourself and bring through money, utilizing that, and then you can still live your own life without putting your time into that space, that is a no-brainer, right? So can you imagine, because when that, and I know we were speaking about this prior, but like imagine that leaking into the spiritual community and having healers have, spaces open and available that are completely run by AI technology. And it takes the humanness out of everything. And like how, like this AI, they don't have, any kind of heart space or energetic field or intuition. I mean, they have it like an AI intuition, but and that's all based on mathematical equations, but it just makes you think what this space could potentially turn into with this happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary. It really is. And my colleague was telling me that the AI technology, the way it is now, you can program it to become an expert in a particular field, and it will download and integrate all of the data that's available to it around that specific industry or topic or expertise. And that is not negligent from the spiritual community, right? That they don't just completely negate this space. So it is something that I think we need to be wary of. But I think the other thing is social media, right? Things that are online. And it's interesting that last year I was feeling this pull to be more in person and more in a one-on-one space. But truly, it's convenience to be able to access and connect with so many more people than you would, in an online space. So right now I'm thinking we are going to be seeing next year, or with this integration of AI into humanity, into our society, we will be seeing a rise in more in-person spaces, I think. And that's something that I am going to be doing if this does come about to be a problem. Because the other thing is, like, how can you tell, right? There is AI technology out there that can clone you and can speak like you, talk like you, download all of the data that, mirrors exactly you, has your face, So I don't know. I think the rise in in-person things will be something that comes out of this that will be a positive effect.
It's really frightening. And I think that we'd be stupid to not try and push that, right? Like, and it almost, to me, it feels like having to kind of fight for our space in, our position in this space. And that's a really scary thing to think about, to think of having to fight to still hold space for people, and for people to keep continuously choosing us over, technology it seems wild now, but really we're gonna meet that spot in the future very, very soon. It's really frightening. It is.
It is. It will be an interesting next 12 months, that's for sure. I'm curious if you've actually heard anybody else in the spiritual space talk about AI at all, because I haven't heard it come up. I haven't even heard people like Elizabeth April talk about it. Not that I've connected with her content in a really long time, but usually she's kind of that very rebellious, very clear, pure channel that talks about things. Have you heard anybody talk about it?
No, I mean, the only person that I've seen speak about it was last night, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, or you're familiar, Tanita, but Heather from Activation Vibration.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she actually posted herself as an AI, and she was like, "So this is a new and upcoming thing. What do you like? What is everyone's opinion on this? Drop it below." But then she'd obviously taken in the activity of giving her data away to do that. So I'm like, well, maybe she's not really fussed about it if she's doing this. But I don't think anybody has challenged the idea yet. I think that there are so many people willing to just go with the flow with it without thinking about the impact that it has. Like, I think that you should explain as well what you were telling me before we began about the Akashic Records.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, you can program an AI software to become an expert in any field. And like I said, it's not... It can be in any field that you choose. So you could teach an AI to read the Akashic Records, to download all of the data that is available to it on the Akashic Records, and overnight it will become an expert in the Akashic Records field. Not only that, it can clone my identity and then, you know, continue to talk about all of this online as well. What's scary about that is you are connecting with a really like beautiful like frequency as a human being, and then that being done by artificial intelligence just feels really icky. And it feels
low
really
vibration,
scary. Yes.
Yeah.
My thing, I think I'm going to go into my Akashic Records tonight and actually ask them about this, because I haven't done any exploring myself in the records around this, and ask them what, you know, what this means for me as a teacher of the field, but also what this means for the Akashic Records too, because don't forget, they are light beings and they want the best for human consciousness. So I'm curious if AI will even be able to connect with it. But in saying that, can they fake it? Because we know that's able to happen, not just with AI.
Oh my God. Honestly, and I'm just going to say this, people are so fucking gullible.
Literally.
People are so gullible and it hurts me. Like, there's still people that are like, gets a message off someone impersonating me and they're like, is this you? Like, of course it's not me.
I'm going to get married in a week and have all my children and win the lottery.
What's your zodiac sign? I have a message for you. Honestly, but in all seriousness, it is scary because people are gullible and people are very, very naive in this space, because unfortunately, and I mean, I don't really want to say unfortunately, it's just naturally this space attracts people who can be very desperate and searching for support and guidance that, you know, they probably could, you know, draw from themselves, but they do like to instill that trust onto others first and foremost. And having this so accessible, like, can you imagine how accessible it would be to have your own AI? Like, you could potentially have an AI that is like your higher self. That's so weird.
Yeah. Yep. It's fucking weird. It's weird. It's really weird to think about. It's weird to think about all of the possibilities. I'm also curious to see how long it's going to take for the integration to actually happen. I'm curious to see what that's going to do to, you know, the job field. I'm curious to see what that's going to do to pay as well, because you're paying for somebody who doesn't have the same, or something that doesn't have the same needs as a human, doesn't need to take breaks, doesn't need to go to the toilet, to do a job that they can become an expert in, you know, less than 24 hours. So,
yeah.
I don't know. But also,
sorry, you go.
I was just thinking that, you know, I'd felt this pull to, we've had this conversation privately actually about, you know, trying to invite people into their own expertise, into their own kind of intuition and their own abilities to connect with this divine information. That pull is just being kind of confirmed for me. But then I'm like, if I'm putting this content out there, I don't want just anybody accessing it. And by anybody, I mean by AI accessing it. So is there a way that we can protect the information and the teachings that we're trying to spread that just kind of gives it to people who we know are truly aligned and ready to receive it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it would have to be in person. There'd be no other way to do that, because I mean, like, there's no doubt people, you know how like you talk and your phone is near you, and then you see the ads come up on your phone for the thing you've been talking about. Like, there's no doubt that happens in Zoom calls, phone calls, over text message, like any sort of platform where you're sharing information online. So, like, it would have to be in person, surely. And then still that, if you had your phone near you, you would still have your data taken from you. Like, it's never ending, honestly. It is never ending. The ways in which nothing is classified anymore. Nothing's sacred. Nothing is between you and just another person. It's shared with, the big world wide web now.
Yeah.
Another thing that I find really interesting, and just changing the trajectory here a little bit again, but I don't know if you read about this, but back in the day, I think like two years ago.
Honestly,
Honestly,
back in the day, lots changed.
So much has happened in the last 2 years. It honestly feels like the olden days.
Yeah, literally. Anything pre-COVID was back in the day.
Like back in the old world. Elon Musk. I know that he supported AI. He was all for it. He now is warning people against it.
Shit.
He has done a backflip.
Really?
He has done a backflip, and he is now warning people not to trust it, not to support it. So just that in itself is interesting. And I just want to dig deeper into the why. And it's like, if Elon's worried, I'm worried.
Yeah. Wow, I had no idea.
This is the guy that wants to go live on Mars, and he's worried about AI. Like, maybe I'm worried too. Maybe we should all be worried. But again, just to preface this is not to incite fear in anyone. This is just an open conversation about, just hypothetically speaking about what could possibly be happening. And just use discernment as well, with things that come up that are automated and, behind huge technological advancement. It's just like, just use your discernment. Just try to step out of being like so naive about things when they're presented to you. Question things. Stay curious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. I truly haven't heard anybody else talk about AI except for the conversations that I've had with my colleague at work. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now. So it's really interesting for me to be able to have this conversation, especially with you. You have a very different perspective than, he does at work. And hearing that about Elon Musk, I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting, because this is somebody who is incredibly intelligent, although, let's be honest, he obviously doesn't make the smartest decisions always, and that's okay, referring to the Twitter scandal. But yeah, it's very interesting. And if anything that you can take away from this conversation, it is to use discernment. And I think it's also to recognize that when you're doing business with a human, you're doing business with a human, right? And human things will come up. And like, especially for us as readers in this space, we don't pump out content like a robot. We're not meant to. We're cyclical human beings, and life does come up. I'm worried that there won't be as much sympathy for that in the next couple of years, because already it's feeling very pressurized for me personally in terms of getting things out the door, making sure I'm on schedule, I'm on time, I'm predictable, right? So
even just consistency, because and I'm just speaking specifically into the spiritual community and running a spiritual business when I say this, but consistency isn't a thing when you're doing this kind of business. Like, you follow whatever energy wave you're riding. And I always say, sorry, I just dropped something. I always say this as well about, even my schedule. I'm like, I can't actually, when I'm doing my readings and when I'm holding space with people, if it's remotely, it's like, if I wake up that morning and I'm having like a mental health crisis, I'm not going to sit down and hold space for you that day, because that wouldn't be very, I just think that that's really, like, there's no integrity in that. Yeah. There's no integrity, right? Yeah. Because it wouldn't be coming from a place that's centered and grounded. So it's like, well, then that gets pushed back until the next day. Or if I'm not feeling okay that day, it gets pushed back maybe even like 3-4 days after. Then all of a sudden I'm 4 days behind schedule, and then I'm having to be like, oh, sorry guys, I'm behind schedule, blah, blah, blah. But can you imagine, like, with AI, there'd be no room for that, which means there's no room for us in this space to operate in a natural human way, to to operate our businesses in a way that creates that flexibility and that understanding of human nature.
Yeah.
And then we're thrust into this way of operating that is mechanical, that's robotic, that's just not human anymore. So it's like, in a sense, we need to turn into AI ourselves. Or we have the pressure to sort of turn into that and to operate in that way because we're competing against essentially a computer. I'm like, the more I speak into this, the more I'm like shriveling up into my soul. I just don't want to. I don't want to compete with that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm interested to know like your perspective and like kind of shifting this again in a sense of, you know, people that do show up in a very robotic way where it's just like pumped out constantly information all the time on the table, pushed out into. And then if for me personally, I kind of lose a little bit of value in that person that I maybe once held because I'm like, they're not doing it from a place of genuine, I don't know, integrity and just wanting to help. It's like staying up with everything, like the rat race, the algorithm, with pleasing people, with making sure they get a certain number of likes, you know, shares, whatever. But I just don't ever want to compete with that. And I refuse to compete with that. I just won't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before I answer that, like to your point, that's why I have this conspiracy theory around integration, right? And that's why they are wanting to integrate us because we're being told to look more like them and AI is being told to look more like us. So it is an interesting kind of perspective. But yeah, in terms of consistency in this space, I mean, I always think about what is my purpose for following this person? Why am I in their space? What's motivating me to be in this space? And a lot of the time it's because I'm lacking those real life connections in my day-to-day setting and I want them when I jump online. So when I see people posting content and for me, what icks me is like the really sterile, businessy kind of marketing content from a human being. That kind of makes me feel a little bit because I want to connect with the person. And I see what you mean about if they're constantly just pushing and pushing and pushing content, you're like, where is the humanness in that? Because as a human, we can see the waves that happen in energy. We connect with the real life day-to-day stuff, but also we have been primed for so long to remove ourselves from the equation when we're in a business. Traditional business teachings tell us to just tell people what they want to hear, to give them their problem and then tell them that you're the solution, right? Nowhere in that have we been taught by mainstream teachings like universities to be a human front and center. So that shift is happening and it kind of spills into the spiritual community because unfortunately we think that's the only way to run a successful business because that's really what's being taught of us. And if anything, this just confirmed like a download that I had this morning, a personal one about where I am wanting to take everything in the next 5 years. So I don't know. It's just, I think we need more humans. We need more humans in this space, more human tendencies. And I think we need to be a lot more forgiving, not just to ourselves, but the people we're connecting with online too. And the things that we're purchasing, you know?
Yeah. There needs to be more understanding. There needs to be more empathy. And man, I mean, I don't struggle with this because I work in the space, so I know what it's like. But as a consumer, it would be pretty easy to forget there's a human being behind the business who is holding space, and it's not as easy just to sit down and channel something through. It's like you need to get yourself in the right headspace. You need to... There's so many tools that you can use to lean on to help you. And, you know, sometimes like we have our own life to run. We have our own families to look after. We have our own shit going on. So, yeah, it's just, it reminds me a lot of like what I've been sort of moving through the last few months just within my business personally, you know, so many understanding, beautiful people, but obviously I've been struggling a little bit with my own mental health the last few months, and I haven't been waking up ready to hold space every single day consistently for my clients, which means I've had to spread apart a lot of my work and kind of extend my return time, I guess you could say. And while most people have been really understanding and just said, you know, divine timing, it'll get back to me when it's meant to, there has been a few people who have been really pressured me, or, you know, passive aggressively tried to kind of insinuate like, where the hell's my reading? Yeah. And I'm just like, it's so hard to even respond to that, because my response to that would be just closing the door.
Yeah.
or just refunding their money and saying, you know, and that's what I've actually decided to do moving forward is if I'm feeling pressured, then it's not aligned.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in like taking the easy way out when it comes to things, but what I'm trying to say is that I don't want to work with people who are desperate for answers and clawing for answers off other people. I want people who are genuinely curious, that are happy to sort of sit and be with themselves until that comes through for them. And I refuse to work with people that are like, I need answers. Like, when's my reading coming through? Hey, just reminding you my reading. Like, sorry, I don't mean to, you know. I can't do that. So going forward, I've made the commitment. I'm like, it's not about the money.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just be politely refunding them and saying, you know, if you're really this like wanting this robotic service, this isn't the place.
Yeah.
I'm not AI.
Yeah, literally. Maybe that should just be our tagline. We are not AI.
We are not AI. Like,
I love that. And I've done that on multiple occasions too, because I mean, the work that we do, it's so vulnerable, and it's so like perceptible to our energy, to our mood, to our emotional state, to our surroundings, to our whole life. And so when you book with us, you're not just booking with us, but you're actually like integrating time into our life. And that is something that I know we take very, very seriously. And we're not the type of people that are just going to push a reading out to push a reading out. Like, we actually really love this space and the work we do, and we want to stand in integrity with it. And I think it's a great idea, because like refunding people's money when you don't feel in alignment to access their energy or hold space for them, because sometimes it's just not aligned. And I'm sure there are readers out there who do them very, very quickly, but also I'm sure there are readers out there who don't have children, who don't have other things going on, that do have the time, space and capacity to just sit down and pump readings out all day, every day. It's just not us, and that's okay, right? So it's it's an interesting time to be alive, isn't it?
It is interesting. And in saying that too, I think it's really important to just like clarify as well for anyone listening who is a consumer that, you know, healers aren't healed.
Yes. Can you say that again? Seriously, because more people need to hear that.
Healers are not healed.
Yes.
No one is healed.
Yes. Like, not even AI.
Not even AI. Like, we are not these saints that sit upon these pedestals that just effortlessly hand out stuff. Like, we are constantly moving through our own growth as well. So I find that there's such a huge perception of healers or guides that it's like, oh, they've made it, they've accomplished it, they've done the work, they've done the growth. And it's like, no, while you were pestering me about when your reading is going to arrive in your inbox, I was actually having a mental health breakdown.
Yeah.
So we're like, it's like, we're real people. And if we were healed, if we did all the work and we had accomplished this point where we were like, there's nothing else that we need to move through, we're done, we're healed, we've got all the space to hold for everyone, it's like, we would not be here. we would not be living the human experience. We've
Yeah.
come to Earth. We've chosen the human experience to keep healing ourselves and to keep experiencing all of these highs and lows. And just because you're a healer or a guide does not mean you move through that. So I guess it's just kind of like, I don't know why, but I just feel like I need to put a call out there to people who are consumers just to have a little bit more empathy, to just kind of know that everything is within, divine timing, and that if you are calling on people to support you and to bring through answers, if that's coming from a place of desperation, makes it really hard as a space holder to actually access your energy. So maybe it's not the best to reach out during that time, but just do some self-work, do some shadow work, to just try and, settle your own nervous system before you go ahead and like desperately book in with someone for an answer, because you won't be getting an answer.
Yes.
That's coming from a grounded space, because your energy is not grounded. Yes. So it's kind of like it's all up in the air.
Exactly, right? And I want to expand on that too. Like, there's no hierarchy. There's no hierarchy in, like, we're 10 steps in front of you and you should book with us because we're where you want to be. It's not like that. Like, we need to stop that because it's really damaging. And I'm in total agreement with you there. I think it's really important to understand that readings, especially Akashic readings, should be a confirmation of something that you already deep down know or remember. If there's any like majorly new information coming out, like if you are sitting there with no job, you are really, really sick, and the reader says, you are going to get married next week and you are going to win the lottery. And it's like,
that's not an Akashic reading.
Yeah, you're like, you would know if that's for you deep down. And I think that the intention behind these readings that we're doing is to confirm what you already know and to remind you that you are, or maybe you're not, on the aligned path for you as an individual. And the Akashic Records is here to give you information to support you, not to upheave your whole entire life, not to pull you out of the depths, because it's your job, it's your responsibility to walk yourself out of the depth. It's nobody else's responsibility to fix your life. Not even us, not even the Akashic Records, right? And exactly what Aleisha was just saying, we actually are on Earth to walk this journey and to feel the challenges of life. And you can't just like pass that off to somebody and be like, you know what? I don't feel like doing that today. It's like, I always think about childbirth, right? Like, I don't know about you, but there was a point where I was like, you know what? Like, I tap out. I don't want to give birth to this child anymore. They're like, too bad. You have to. Like, there's literally no other choice. And I think that is, truthfully, oh my God, I just had the connection for a second. I think that's why we're on Earth. And it's interesting because if you listen to the Elon Musk episode, remember he says Earth is the cradle? Like,
oh my goodness.
And as I was saying that, they reminded me, I was like, what? That's wild.
Full circle moment.
It freaked me out a little bit, but anyway. So yeah.
It is the cradle. Earth is the cradle. And we're all little babies. We don't know what we're doing. Just trying to navigate our way through. So, I mean, good luck to us. But know that you're doing a great job.
Good job, sweetie.
You're doing great, sweetie.
And I think it's cool. We get to do this together. It's not about, like I said, passing responsibilities to other people, but it is about walking alongside. And that's why we love doing these readings. I speak for myself here. I love doing these readings. I love, working in this space because we get to walk this together and we get to kind of reflect back to each other where we are and support each other through this journey. So I'm excited. And if anything, this whole, information about AI has not deterred me from this space. If anything, it's made me want to integrate more deeply into it. And we as a collective have experienced many, many challenges. And I have no doubt that we will get through whatever is thrown at us. We always have, and we always, always will.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's like we're in a U-inverse, not a AI in metaverse. like we're here to do this. We're here to live this experience. And yeah, it's weird. Like I feel like it's this impending thing and it's a bit heavy, but at the same time, it's kind of pushed me to focus on bringing more as much humanness as I can into the work and to just keep that at the forefront of this space always, because it will be taken, or people will attempt to take that away and we will not let it.
Yes. Oh, this was so good, and I'm really glad that I got to talk with you guys about this, because otherwise I probably would have spiraled into just the depths of my own mind. So thanks for letting me share this
into the deep dark Piscean waters of your mind. So thanks, guys. You've helped save Tanita.
Yeah. From a mental health crisis, literally.
Mental health crisis. No, it's been so good. I'm so glad we got to have this chat.
Yeah, me too.
We are coming to the end of the year, so we will only have a few more episodes left until we wrap up season 1 of the Divinely Human podcast. So be sure to keep an eye out for those episodes that are coming up. You can find us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube.
Yes.
And of course at the Divinely Human podcast on Instagram. We would love some feedback. We would love some reviews if you enjoyed it, because they go to making it more accessible to everyone else who is aligned to find us. So you guys can help make that happen. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
Bye.